cover this tonight? Okay, awesome. Did you manage to attend? Go through it, try to pick some issues which are there. You managed to do that? Okay. Right. So before we start, the objective of this class is mainly covering a tutorial. So mainly looking at exam technique. What are the things that you're supposed to be worried about in terms of when you get into the exam? I think it's stemming from your end of semester 1 results. I asked some people to come and see me if your results were in certain ranges. I haven't received a lot of people who came for discussions. You know the ranges. If you're in the red or if you're in the yellow, we're supposed to be. But if you're sitting in the green range, then it was okay. Your red was 0 to 29%, and your yellow was 30 to 39%. So anyone who was above 40%, then it's fine. But if you're sitting at 39 going down, I asked you to come and see me so that we talk about what happened and we help each other. Okay, so now we're approaching test 2. No one came through. I'm assuming things are okay. So I think I explained a number of things through those letters in terms of what potentially may have gone wrong in terms of end of semester 1. I think a lot of people complained much about the length of the paper. Did you also experience the same challenges? Like the paper was too long and you couldn't finish? Okay, yeah. So welcome to finacc CTA. That's the nature of the exam. The papers are going to be long. Expect scenarios which are between 9 to 12 pages until you finish. Okay. So for CTA and ITC, 9 pages going up for financial reporting. For APC, obviously the pages will be more, 27, 28 pages. Those are the nature of the scenarios. So now here's the challenge. I think you also spoke about those things when you did the previous touch class with Elliot. Confirm you've done one with Elliot. And you talked about the reading time, the 30 minutes, what you're supposed to do in the 30 minutes. Confirm? Did you talk about that? Okay, because I don't want to repeat if you already discussed about it. Okay. But part of what we noticed was people are not finishing the exam because, number one, within the first 30 minutes, you're not finishing the reading in the time which is allocated for reading. And the reason why potentially people are not finishing reading within the 30 minutes is because we're trying to identify the issues in the scenario during the reading time. So get so much excited and be like, this is a provision, this is an acquisition here, if it's 3, if it's 10. Of an entity which is being, let's say it's being sued by one of its employees. That can trigger a lot of things. That can trigger a contingent liability. That can also trigger some issues related to audit. Can also trigger some issues related to MAF, management decision making. What should we do? The decisions which might be taken, they might also trigger some ethical issues which we might need to talk about. So during the reading time, it's not the time to then try and figure out if that event which took place is going to result in a contingent liability or an ethical issue. But rather it's generally to understand that 1, 2, 3 events took place and keep it in your mind. So if you do that, we believe that within the first 30 minutes of reading time, you'll be able to finish 9 pages. You should be done in 30 minutes. Just going through. So most important information is, did you understand the background of the entity? Who is it? What do they do? What is their business model? what are the financial periods which you have, who are you in the scenario, and then from there, the stories will be put into categories. So what stories do I have? I've got story number one, for example, for your media, you have story number one, which is about inventory. Okay? Then after the inventory issues happened, some of the inventory was being transported from one area to another. Then there was an accident. We lost inventory. Great. I don't need to worry about the accounting, but I know that inventory was lost during the process. Then there was some money which was then paid to compensate the driver and so forth. Then done. That's issue number one. Then what is issue number two? Issue number two is ABC acquired another entity. Then in the process of acquiring, they entered into certain contracts. And then some contracts were cancelled, so they moved into another building. So you're understanding that, okay, I've got two entities. Those two entities, they've merged. After merging, they then started using the same resources. That is what I need to understand. Once you get the required then directs exactly what you need to do. So if the required then comes back and says, now calculate the cost of that inventory, that's when I then need to worry about, so which standard is it? So do I need to now worry about IS2? So what I then noticed on your end of semester one exam was when I looked at the whole exam, there were difficult sections and there were easy sections and there were moderate sections. And most of us went on got part of the exam. And we left the easiest part of the exam. Mainly because the most difficult part of the exam is the part that we're familiar with. Because often we study hard things. We study the complex stuff. And then we miss those easy marks. So in the build-up of the question or of the case study, we're not allowed to give you 100 marks of difficult stuff. They should be spread throughout the paper, with an understanding that an average student should be able to get all the easy marks, an average student should be able to get all the moderate marks, then an average student might struggle with the complex. So the easy and the moderate should enable you to pass the exam. So which means if you don't identify those easy and moderate marks, then you're in trouble. Because that now means you're now left with the complex. So we went on to attack question number 2, which was consolidation of a foreign operation. That's not easy stuff. We went on to do calculations of FCTL. And we left a question which was simply adding inventory, purchase price, plus duty, plus transport. So when you look back, people who failed, if you failed end of semester 1, I believe that you didn't fail because the exam was difficult, but you failed because of exam technique. So I need you to really, before you go to test 2, I need you to really go back to that test, the end of semester 1 test, and look at the inventory question. Most of you had not, because number 1, we don't do it in class at all. But do you think you could still answer that question by just going to the stand and be like, how do you measure inventory on day 1? Could you do that? Because what I expected was a person who failed that first, that inventory question, I expect you would have only faced challenges on application of IFRIC 22, which was the invoice had been prepaid. So they received the inventory, I think 3 months after the payment had been done, which means there might be some exchange gains or losses which were there, which IFRIC 22 was saying you need to ignore those. So you might have raised your purchase price, which was in foreign currency, using the wrong rate, an incorrect rate. That is the only thing that I expected people not to get. But the rest, I think it was easy stuff. Then you move from part A, which was calculate the cost of the inventory. Then you went to part B, which was now prepare an extract of the P&L related to those inventories. Was it difficult to find cells? Do you think so? Cells, if they say they manufactured 100 units and 70% of 30% are in stock, which means 70% has been sold. And then there was the price which was given for the inventory, which was check the number of units, multiplied by 70%, multiplied by the purchase price. Do you think that was difficult? And cost of sales, you're simply taking 30% of whatever cost, what you call your own costs on part A. No one would dispute with you because you were coming to part B and you say, this is my own cost of inventory. Don't judge me. So whatever cost of sales that you're putting there, as long as it was based on part A, you're getting full marks. And the concept of, I understand that you've done costing in math, and you did it at first year. Confirm? And this year was the second time. So from my understanding, I knew that you've done absorption costing. And you understand the concept of over-absorption and under-absorption. And you understand the concept of normal losses and abnormal losses. So at this point, I think you'd agree with me that it becomes quite difficult for me to go and approve on 30 October that this person, this one is a fine accountant who cannot calculate an abnormal loss and know how to account for an abnormal loss on manufacturing of inventory. Am I right? Or a person who takes a loss which happened for the inventory, which during that accident, we lost inventory. And then the person which has been lost, which has been destroyed, takes that loss and goes to load it as part of manufacturing costs. Now, that extent resembles that a person is not thinking in the exam at all. So I don't know how to say this, but what I'd like to say is, as you go for test 2, okay, test 2 does not have a huge contribution. What's the contribution for that one? The 10 or 15%? 10%, okay. You're not going to lose much, okay, if the 10% doesn't go well. For test 2, try not to panic at all. Go in there and be like, you know what, I'm going to give you what I know. What I don't know, I don't know. Okay. Breathe in, breathe out before you start writing. Read your scenario, understand it. Read the required, understand it. When you start answering, plan your solution, be like, this is what I know, I'm going to start here, I'm going to go there. What I don't know, I'm not going to worry about it. Okay. I assure you, if you give all you know, you pass the exam. Don't stress about what you don't know. Today is the time to stress about things that you don't know. The day of the exam, what you don't know, you don't know. You're not going to know it. Okay. So I'd say that's not the time to be stressing. So test 2. For test 2, we don't have a lot of topics. The major topics that we have IFRS 15, revenue, which we also did last year, I believe. So last year we focused much on the 5-step model. And then for the block classes that we did this year, I'm sure we then focused on the other aspects, the additionals, which are not the 5 steps. Okay. Which means at this point, expectation is that when you look at revenue, you are now able to cover the 5 steps, and you're also able to cover the special considerations which are covered by IFRS 15. We'll talk about some of them just as a recap. Then the second standard which is being examined is IFRS 16, your lease standard. Last year we covered, I think, 80% of that standard. What is the right of use asset? What is the lease liability? What is the classification from a lessee's point of view and from the lessor's point of view? What is the measurement? What is the presentation? What is the disclosure? I think that's what we did last year. So this year was kind of like a revision of what we already knew. But obviously, part of the changes which are there, the standard is not changing. What is changing is the nature of the exam. So where last year we were asking you the 5-step model for revenue, probably this year we'll be asking you to review a journal entry which has been done to see if it's in compliance with IFRS 15. Or we might be asking you to write the disclosures for revenue transactions. So the nature of the examination is the one which is highly likely to change. Same applies with your IFRS 16. Last year, your IFRS 16 was quite straightforward because this contract, what do you think about it? Then you talk about we get a right-of-use asset here, or we don't have a right-of-use asset. But this year now, obviously, it's going to be more complex. I think if you attempted this question, you will get the idea of what I'm talking about. Okay. Then the last topic, which is part of this block, is IFRS 5, non-current assets held for sale and any discontinued operations. That topic, again, we did last year. So again, it's a revision again. So there's no new topic which is coming through, which means we thought it fair that for those 3 topics, we can make it maybe 60% of the paper. Then we also throw some other things to the extent only of 10%. Okay. So which means we are expecting that you're not just reading those 3 topics, but you're also looking at a bit of some consolidations, some financial instruments, some provisions. But what I assure you is the other additional topics which might be examined, they will be at a basic level, not at an advanced level. Okay. Just so that you don't forget about the other topics. Okay. Then remember that your test 2 is an integrated paper. So again, it's even more reason why during reading time, you shouldn't try to pick the concepts of the standards, but rather to understand the scenario, because you are not aware as to what am I writing. So that scenario can turn out to be an audit scenario and not a financial reporting scenario. Okay. So please don't be quick to find yourself opening the standard during the reading time. Okay, happy. So for this revision class, what I want to focus on rather is, I think, exam technique and stuff like that, that one has been said a lot of times. I want to go back to IFRS 15. We'll talk briefly about that to study about for IFRS 15. Then I'll jump into the IFRS 16 question. So I'm not repeating the class. This is a tutorial. So the question that I gave you, Oxford Limited, the expectation is everyone has got that question open, so that we go through that question together. For the guys who are online, I'm sure they will not be able to see anything which is over the board there, which is basically the same question. Therefore, you just need to have the question with you so that you can follow through. Okay, so IFRS 15. Now, your standard covers the 5-step. I'm assuming that the 5-step, we don't have issues with the 5-step as of today. But where CTA will be difficult for you is application of the exceptionals, which are not just the 5 steps. So for revision of the 5-step, I would say, I gave you a question to revise on, which was the January 2018 paper. So the January 2018 paper, I think we covered that. So for the 5-step model, I think you can revise that one. Please take note, when you look at that paper, it says critically evaluate. You still remember we talked about the type of requirements that we have. Okay, so just to give you a rundown again, You can have a question which says explain, you can have a question which says discuss, you can have a question which says review, you can have a question which says critically evaluate, you can have a question which simply says prepare financial statements or disclose. So I don't want us to have expectation gaps. So let's agree. If the required says explain, what are you expected to do? If it's an explanation, what will you do so that we agree as to if this will be enough or this won't be enough? Explain? You want to try it in the test? Yes. A detailed account of something. Okay, yes, agree. Yeah.
I think you need the application of the specific standards.
Okay, great. So I agree with both inputs, which are, if you are explaining, you are taking the principles which are somewhere else, and you are elaborating on the meaning of those concepts. And since this is an applied level test, which means your explanation should not only be limited to the standard, but your explanation should also go to the extent of the application of the case which is there. But otherwise, when you're explaining something, you're simply taking a principle which is there and you are trying to elaborate on it so that someone understands how it works. Now, when you explain, how does your explanation differ from a required which says discuss? You do the same things. If the required says discuss the accounting treatment of IFRS 15 and explain the accounting treatment of IFRS 15. Well, if you do the same thing, you're on the road to failure. So how do the two differ? Yes.
The discussion with the aim require you to make a conclusion.
Your discussion will require you to make a conclusion. If I'm explaining something, is it mandatory for me to conclude on it? So I'm explaining, my friend, this is how it works. But when we're discussing, we need to close this thing out. Agreed. So if your discussion does not have a conclusion, you're missing marks. But conclusion is not enough when you're discussing. Because if I say, come, let's discuss this issue, we don't stop at a conclusion. What else are you expected to do if you're discussing? Yes, so that's part of the top part. So your explanation will form part of the discussion. Confirm? Okay, so discussion has got explanation within. But your discussion goes further than where the explanation stops. So what are the extras? Transaction. But your explanation can also get there.
Discussion more like an open precedent where you're looking at the main achievements and you come up with your analysis.
Yes. Okay. So agreed. Now when we get to the conclusion, which is different from what you thought, what do we need to do? So you were thinking that when we have got right of use assets, yeah, that one. The boyfriend is looking for someone. So when you confirm you know that this is wrong. So let's discuss this. Which means when you get into the discussion, you're going to explain to this person that, no, look, when it comes to leases, this is how you account for leases. So the explanation bit comes through. Then I need to conclude on that. So the conclusion is for right of use assets, the measurement model which is supposed to be there will be based on IFRS 16, which is I need to measure initially at probably the present value of the lease liability plus any initial direct cost, which is different from what IS 40 says. So given this conclusion, do I need to revisit your position if it's a discussion? Because I've made my own conclusion. You have got your own conclusion, which is wrong. So after I reach the conclusion, do I need to then come back and say, now, I recommend that you need to reverse whatever that you've done so that you get here? Do we need to do that in a discussion? What do you think?
Just sorry.
Mm-hmm.
What I think about these phrases that are this conclusion was going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
They now come up.
Thank you. So if we are in a discussion and we reach a conclusion, and next week we meet again, I'll be like, yeah, I worked out on that thing. So I then included the right of use asset. You know, ask what happened to the one that you've put in IS 40, like, you simply said put the right of use asset. You didn't tell me that I need to remove that thing that I put there. Makes sense? But we were together, we were talking, why didn't you tell me that? So if it's a discussion question, discussion goes beyond explanation in the form that for a discussion question, you need to conclude and recommend something because you are with the person. So without a conclusion, your discussion is incomplete. If something had already been done by that other person, which is incorrect or which you do not agree with, your discussion is not complete until you recommend what to do, because something has been done already. Okay. Now, your other required that you get is you get a review. I think we talked about reviews before, right? What did we agree on if it's a review question? If the question says, can you review the accounting policies which have been done, what does it mean? Come on, guys, time? Yes. Okay. So I agree we need to look at what was done. Okay. But obviously, in terms of the work which was done, there are some things which were done correctly and some things which were not done well. Okay. So you say we look at both the things and comment on both things. Okay. Now my question is, how does the review differ from an evaluation? If the required says review this, and if the required says evaluate this, how do the two change? How do the two differ? Because you can't give the same thing. If it's evaluate, okay, you look at both. Mm-hmm. Okay, great. So thank you for that. I think most of us, we've been in an audit environment, confirm? We've received some review queries to date. At some point, you've received a review query somewhere. Now, when you get a review query, did your partner or manager ever say, this is awesome work? I didn't even think about this. Or your review queries are always, you've got 13 things to fix, my friend. Confirm? Okay, so when you're getting review queries never talk about what you've done good. It's not a performance evaluation. But when it comes to a performance evaluation, if the performance evaluation is full of negative things, you're almost getting fired. There should be some good in what you're doing. So the evaluation looks at both. You need to comment on the good, you need to comment on the bad. If it's a review, you need to focus on what has not been done right. But here's the thing now. How do you convince me that what I've done is not right? So if I accounted for my inventory at fair value, why would you come to me and say your accounting for inventory is incorrect? So if you're putting a review query and saying, See, a cell with a right to return. We talked about this one before. You go and buy your stuff from TV sales and hire, they give you 30 days to say if it's not functioning well, you can return it. At what point does TV sales and hire raise their revenue? Is it at the point of you getting the good on day one, or is it at the point of when the right to return then lapse? Or maybe do they look at the probability of you returning the product? Three potential scenarios. I'm sure you've gone through this section and you know how to account for it, right? Why can't pretend are common? So I'm telling you, if you don't know why can't pretend, don't come to the exam. When you write in the 19th, find an excuse, get sick. Then D, warranties. Remember, you've got two types of warranties. What are they again? The types of warranties. Huh? You got a what? So remember, you got a purchase warranty, and then you've got the other one, which is part of the product where you don't purchase. Now you need to understand how a warranty works for you to be able to account for a warranty. And normally, confirm, I'm not quite sure about the English. What's the difference between warranty and guarantee? Is it one and the same thing? Someone told me that for a guarantee, it's not working, you return the product, I'll give you another product. For a warranty, you return the product, they fix it, then they give it back to you. Is it so? How do you understand guarantees and warranties? From when you did the block class, how did you understand it? Because the reason why I'm asking this is in the scenario will not mention that this is a warranty. But the scenario will explain the business model. So the scenario will explain that when the customer comes and they purchase the product, they are given 30 days, where if the product is not functioning accordingly based on the manufacturing specifications, they are allowed to bring the product and it can be fixed and then returned to them. Or they'll be given another product to replace this one. So does the accounting remain the same? But the moment you are returning the product, potentially it's now going to sell with the right to return that product. If you're not happy with it, you can return it and be like, no, I'm not taking this thing. It's not working. Whilst if it's a warranty, for a warranty, I might be saying, no, look, if it's not working properly, I'll come and fix it. You're not returning the product. Does it make sense? But rather, you are saying, look, come and fix this. It's not working based on what you say it's supposed to. So this takes you back to step 2 now to say if you've got a warranty, is a warranty a separate performance obligation? Because I purchased this asset. But when I purchase the asset, I'm expecting that it's working in the condition that it's supposed to. And if it's not, you've got another obligation to come and fix it. So is that other obligation a separate performance obligation which should be separated in the transaction price or not? You get where I'm coming from? Okay. So which is why I'm saying now your studying it's important as you prepare for the exam. You know that when you're reading this standard, the idea is not to come here and you say, warranty, how do you treat warranties? Because you get into the exam and you know how to treat warranties, but the problem is from page 1 to page 9, you will not see that there's a warranty. So you take these things and you go back into, in real business, how do these things apply? What sort of a business model ends up with a warranty? Which is purchased or which is part of product? So if it's a purchase, how does it work? If it's inbound within the product, how does it work? So that when you get into the scenario, as you go down and read the scenario, you can actually pick that out. Okay, so based on this business model, there is a warranty there. This one is not a warranty. This one is a sale with the right to return. Happy then? Okay. And the good thing about this B1, do you realize that it says for everything which is there, it gives you the specific way that way. Okay, which means you don't even need to cram. If your IFRS 15 has got stickers all over, you've got issues. Okay, so please, let's go back to those warranties, find out the difference. Purchase versus the one which is not purchased. Then, if, yes. Yeah.
So what is the difference between right of return and warranty? Because from my understanding,
yes.
I'm trying to do it difference between a guarantee
and
a warranty.
Yes.
So the warranty is protect the guarantee.
Okay.
If you buy a pre-print, say it is a 2-year warranty.
Yeah.
Say that if there's any problem, you can change the pre-print and fix it.
Yes.
But when it comes to guarantee now,
yeah,
it's to say you pay your bank for money.
Yes.
So what is the difference between right of return?
Yes. So right of return is saying we got into a deal. If you're not happy with this deal, give me back my product or give me back your money. Warranty is saying done deal is done deal. There's no reverse deal. Once the money is there and you come back with the product, you'll be like, it's not working. Like, I already paid salaries. So I don't have the money anymore. But what we can do is I can fix the product.
So in other words, right of return
is
actually equivalent to a guarantee.
So right of return, yes, it's equivalent to a guarantee, which is why I was saying some businesses use the term guarantee and warranty. If you don't understand what guarantee means and what warranty means, you get into the wrong accounting. Because remember, when you talk about guarantee or right to return, when you go to step number 5 says you recognize your revenue for a good when control transfers. Confirm? So if the guy is going to come back and be like, no, there is your product, take it back, then that means control is not fully transferred to a certain extent. So a problem should not be recognizing revenue as of today. So you then realize that your sale with the right of return affects the extent of the revenue that you recognize. And it also affects the extent of the cost of sales and inventory that you then raise. So if you look at the journal entries that I hope you did some journal entries in practice between the block which you covered this, which was like 4 weeks ago, until today. You now know the journal entries for a sale with the right of return. Yes. So when you look at that journal entry, confirm that journal entry. That journal entry goes back to say when you've got the sale, it raises it reverses that to create a right of return liability. Confirm? And says this liability is not yet a sale until that right lapses. When the right lapses, then we remove it from liability to sales. But for the extent of what I've not recognized as sales, that also means I cannot load it as cost of sales. If it's not cost of sales, then that means I cannot derecognize the inventory. The inventory is still mine. Even if it's sitting with you there, it's still my inventory. What if it's a warranty? The warranty is saying the product is gone, my friend. I'm not taking it back. So do I have a sale? Yeah, I've got a sale. It's a product. When you bring it back saying, my product is not functioning. I'll be like, my problem is I need to fix your product. It ceases to be the product of the selling party to become the product of the buyer. So control is transferred, which means I can recognize my full revenue. But the problem now is that revenue is going with an extended liability. Because the moment I hand over that product to you, I now have a present obligation to fix it in the event that you return it back. So your warranty tends not to affect your sales, but tends to create an extra provision for the extra work that you need to do. Whilst a guarantee or sale with the right of return tends to look back at as control transfer, we probably don't have sales as yet. So you then do your probability estimations and stuff like that to look at what is the potential returns and stuff like that. Yeah. So, like I said before, I can't afford to have you walk into the exam without understanding all of this. Then, E, principal versus agent consideration. What does it mean to be a principal? What does it mean to be an agent? How do you determine the difference? You move from what the standard says, but you don't stop there. At this point, since this is an application course, every concept that you get, you transform it into a business model. So you try and look at practically, if I go out there in practice, which companies have got this arrangement of a principal-agent relationship? It's all over. You got your arrangements between every supermarket with every bakery. That's a principal-agent relationship. So how does it work? If I simply go and try and understand, so how does the relationship between OK Limited and Bakers Inn, how does it function? Because my understanding is each time you walk into OK doesn't market Bakers Inn bread. Am I right? They don't market anyone's bread. Bakers Inn brings their own people and they'll be like, buy my bread. Okay, that is what used to happen. So, if that's the case, if someone is trying to market the bread, if Bakers Inn is marketing and Lobels is not marketing, and both brought in 100 loaves in the morning, by day end, if we've got one loaf left for Bakers Inn, and Lobels has got 70 loaves which are left, which by tomorrow morning it will be stale. Whose loaves is it? Lots of Lobels. Well, OK is going to be like, I told you to market your bread, my friend. They didn't buy it, it's now still, come back and take the stale bread. Then these guys, they take the stale bread and they reload it into their machines and they mix it with the new bread. So if that's the situation now the challenge is when I walk into OK and I take a loaf of bread and I go to the counter, the slip, the receipt which is raised there says OK Limited. Full price, $5.45 for bread, which my understanding is sitting under the ledger of OK. So what revenue is OK recognizing if the product is not theirs? I need to go back and look at what contract exists between OK and Bakers Inn. Whose product is it? Who's taking risk for this? It makes a difference now because it can become quite easy that Lobels is loading the full revenue of the bread in their financial statements. OK is loading the full revenue of the bread in their financial statements, which means you've got two companies which are declaring revenue of the same thing. One of them has to be wrong because one of them did not create the value. Confirm this whole accounting thing that we're talking about. It's about accounting for the value creation which is in the valuation system. So you can't account for value that you didn't create. So you come back down and look at if it's a principal what forms my revenue? If I am an agent, what forms my revenue? But again, I'll say it again. The case study will not come and say A is an agent of B. The case study will give you the business model which exists from A's perspective, and the people that A works with is B and C and D. This is the arrangement with B, this is the arrangement with C, this is the arrangement with C. Which means without understanding how these things work, you will not pick the principal-agent relationship in an exam. And the principles are laid out there. F, customer options for additional goods or services. The customer has got an option for additional goods or additional services which they can get. How does it affect my accounting from a revenue? G, customers unexercised rights. They've got a right which they have, but they've not yet exercised it. This is important. Well, this happens every day in Zoom. We have, for example, we've got these various promotions, the OK Grand Challenge promotion, the Pick and Pay cooking pots promotion, which so I've got some guys who are part of that. You've got some stickers. Yeah, you need to see me after. At least find yourself in the Woolworths promotions, yeah. So when you buy, let's use the Pick and Pay one. You go there, you buy stuff. I think Spy is also doing the same thing, confirm? But the difference is they're giving knives, and then the other guys, the Pick and Pay, are giving pots. Yeah, I saw it because I was reading it on. That's how I know. So now, when you buy, then you get stickers, and those guys don't say one sticker results in one pot. You need to get some ridiculous amount of stickers for you to get that pot. And then when you look at it on picture, it looks like it's a big pot. Then when you do, yeah. So now, is it everyone who's holding those stickers who ends up redeeming? No. I've seen a lot of people, like when the promotion is like closing tomorrow, they start calling each other, do you have stickers? If you could find my face, you're hopeless. You'd rather give me the stickers, then I'll do, next time I'll give you mine. Okay. But the idea is, at the closure of the promotion, there are some people which will have rights, which will then get forfeited at that point. Confirm that's a business model. So how does Pick and Pay account for the product at the point at which you buy in the supermarket? You buy your minimum for $20 and you get one sticker. How many things did you buy? And stickers. Once you reach the installment value, the full amount, you then say, my money is now there. Can I now please have that product? So on day one, that means we've got a problem when you buy the minimum. There are journal entries which are supposed to recognize that, number one, do we have a contract with the customer? Yes, paragraph 9, tick. Number two, how many performance obligations does Pick and Pay have at that point? Paragraph 21 to 29. Then from there, if I've got more than one performance obligation as a result of the customer loyalty points which I've been given, how do I separate the $20 which I've paid? Because when I paid the $20, I thought I was paying for minimum. But you're telling me that there's another product that I'm buying slowly. So how do I allocate the transaction price for that other product that I'm going to get? Then if so, how do we recognize revenue? Which means Pick n Pay cannot recognize the full $20 today, because they say we recognize revenue when control of the good is transferred to the customer. When I'm looking at the goods, you've got two goods. You've got the mini mill, you've got the pot, which is being paid for slowly. So which one have you transferred control? The mini mill today. The pot, no, is still with you, which means that my revenue recognition now is I'm going to recognize this mini mill as of today, and then I'm going to recognize the revenue for the pot at point of transfer of that pot to the customer, which is potentially a redemption date. So as I come back today, if I see Pick n Pay loading the $20 into their revenue account, then there's a problem. But now what happens when I was paying slowly, I was putting money slowly on the side using those stickers, that hire purchase system, and they wanted 50 stickers. I was now at 48. Then they closed their promotion. What happens to the 48, the value of the 48? Because I was paying. So they are unexercised rights, which have been forfeited. That's where this thing then comes. Does it eventually then become revenue at that point? Makes sense? Okay. So if you look at all of these things, you then realize that we broke IFRS 15 into two. Let's start with understanding the 5-step model. Happy? Great. After that, we then say, but the problem is we've got different industries with different business models. So B1 is taking those business models and saying, let's apply IFRS 15 for that model. It will differ when you go into that other model. So if you take B1 before the exam and you visualize the business models which are applicable to each of the sections on B1, and from there you move to, if I'm the accountant of that entity with that business model, what would I do? And to do it properly and correctly, you will not have issues when you get into the exam. G, we did G. H, non-refundable upfront fees, some related costs. You got those guys who want upfront fees, like those non-refundable deposits. You've seen those things. Yes. That's a different model again. Well, one is saying, no, look, my friend, for us to start talking, you need to put some money down. If you don't come, that money goes away. So try to think of what type of business model can we have such a situation? Huh? No. We are. Is that what's happening? Yeah. I need to talk to finance. Application fees. So that's an upfront payment which you are making, which is non-refundable. Confirm? So you look at that upfront fees. What is it there to cover? Is there a performance obligation related to that upfront fees? What if it's to process your application? That's work. Confirm there's a difference between a processed and an unprocessed application. Yeah. You actually need to hire someone to do that job, to process that application. So their performance obligation. Which means one might pay for school fees and pay for application fees, which is the deposit. Those are two separate performance obligations. The application fees is for something else. The fees that you then pay is for something else. Which means CA might be allowed to recognize the application fees as revenue at point of processing your application because they've delivered. Agreed? When the application phase then closes, and you had paid for an application fees, but you then didn't apply, that's a bonus. So at that point, you then say, we no longer have an obligation towards you. Recognize it as revenue. So you need to watch out for upfront fees which are related to performance obligations which can be identified, and some which you cannot relate to any performance obligations. For example, have you ever thought about if you go and join a gym, or if you go and join a golf club, you become a member there. You guys have any of those two, membership on any of those two? Come on, guys. I've got people looking up to you. Right, so think about it. What are you paying for when you pay for membership fees upfront? Non-refundable deposit to be a member. What are you giving me? Is there any specific performance obligation if you say, I'm paying for this? By just being admitted to be a member, you need to pay this amount. So you've got such upfront fees which are not refundable, where you cannot connect to a specific performance obligation, where then it then becomes part of the overall performance obligation, which means that upfront fees, it will be recognized as revenue throughout the contract, which might be over time, not at a point in time. But if there's a specific performance obligation, then it might be at a point in time. So those things are important, which means if I don't understand this will be a good time to call up and golf club and be like, I'm doing a research, I'm doing masters somewhere there. How do you account for your revenue? And explain to you. Yeah. You need to check out the accounting first. Otherwise you get poisoned. So I'm just saying, at least do some research, understand business models, understand how to translate those things into the financial reports, because that's your job. That's what you're being trained to do. H, that's what you did. I, licensing. Licensing are out of your scope. You don't need to worry about licenses. Repurchase agreements. Repurchase agreements are, these are a nightmare, because these are in IFRS 15 and they talk to IFRS 16. There's a connection which is there. We'll talk about them when we get to IFRS 16. But obviously, when there is a repurchase agreement, the question which is there is control transferred or not of the product, so that we know whether we need to recognize revenue or not. Consignment arrangements. These ones, I don't think this is part of your syllabus. I'll check, but I also gave you that listing, right? Yeah, this one should be scoped out. Build and hold arrangements. This is basic and straightforward, where you build someone and you hold the product for someone to then come and collect. So someone pays online for something, then they don't come and collect. Can you recognize revenue? Like, that was not my problem, my friend. If the warehouse bent down, you didn't come and collect your stuff. Customer acceptances, then disclosures of disaggregated revenue. The last two, they are not part of your scope. Okay. So, do you now appreciate the importance of B1? Okay, because I think B1 has taken us, this is over an hour just to talk about B1. So it will be, this is a good checklist for you before you go to the exam. But now what happens, you're now in the exam. You see some funny revenue contract which you don't understand what it is. At that point, you come to B1. It has to fit somewhere here. So I'm going back to where you get that scenario where you are stuck, because end of semester 1 test, we got stuck with that inventory, but we did not utilize the standard. So no matter how things get tough, the standard is there for you. Interpret it in your own way. There's no way you get to interpretation which is 100% wrong. Somehow you collect some marks. Okay, great. So that's the first thing that I wanted to talk about. I still have that question that we need to do. So for IFRS 15, the objective was not for us to redo the class, but the objective was for us to give highlights to each other on areas where we might have overlooked, okay, where we still need to do some work on. Are we good? Can I go to 16 now? Okay, awesome. Right. IFRS 16. So you will see that during your preparation for the exam, your actual standard paragraph 1 to where it ends, very important, it lays out the principles. But your B is very important. Your B breaks down that standard into further explanation, further detail. So always make sure that you have got your B standard well read. Right, 16, after 16. So this one, not too much on the technical. I don't think there are a lot of concepts here. The concepts, they're quite straightforward. I think we've covered almost all of them. So again, accounting treatment, very important for you to go through the accounting treatment. Remember that list modifications and list combinations, they are not scoped out. They are at awareness level. Awareness level doesn't mean that you come to the exam and you say, this is not part of CTA scope. It means you should be able to identify the issue in the exam. You should be able to explain clearly to someone else that issue and how to resolve it. That's awareness level. It doesn't expect you to do any calculations, especially the complex ones. If you're going to do a calculation, maybe do a basic one, but that's the intermediate one. So awareness, be able to identify the issue and explain it to someone else. So I want to emphasize again, modifications and combinations. It's at awareness, we still need to know them. Then there is, what's the other one? What? What's the other one which is not modification? Is it re? Come on guys, I'm depending on you. It should be reassessment or something. Look for things. These modifications. Yes, yes. So it's reassessments. When you reassess, yes. So reassessment, when you reassess the list liability. Reassessments are not at awareness level. You need to know reassessment. No, they're not good. So those are the other things that I also wanted to bring to your attention, if you had not looked at them. Right, so I've got this interesting question here, Oxford Limited, yeah?
So before you go into
yes.
I have a question in relation to the
Okay.
A and B, 5 and 6. In terms of this one for the says that it talks to the rights benefit. Says that an entity shall have the right benefit asset if it can give direction as to how what produce that asset.
Yes.
And then there's a big part says where the how and what is discrete, but the entity shall then establish its right in terms of 24 B1 and B2. So my question was, how then can I establish, say, the purpose for which the asset is going to be used are predefined? Because I really then could not fully comprehend provisions under bit 25 and bit 26. So it tries to break down provision under bit 24A, then bit 26 use examples based on how 25.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Thank you. So when you are looking at your right to control, okay, that's the question. So remember, your right to control has got two requirements. Which are? Two requirements? To be able to enjoy substantially all the economic benefits related to use of the asset. Then the second one, to be able to direct usage of that particular asset. Okay. So it's referring to the second one, which is to be able to direct usage of that particular asset. Now, usage standard breaks down into how many? Two, which are?
How what was
yes.
Way those two are
mm-hmm.
They are two favor.
So you can have the direction of the usage of the asset being predetermined, it's predetermined in the lease contract. Or it might not be predetermined in the lease contract, but rather you are the one who's actually directing the operation of that particular asset. Those are the two ways you can direct. Confirm? Okay. So let's take some examples of that. When you have, let's say that you are hiring a building, for example. How do you think directing of the asset, which form will it be in? Predetermined or you're directing operation?
I think it will be predetermined.
Predetermined. Okay. Why do you say so?
I don't know. I'm just trying to be practical as possible. I'll give an example of doing a system.
Yes.
Say when you are entering into a contract with
yeah.
for the use of the floor, basically say they are going to take the 15 floor as their own
yes.
use it as our office.
Yes.
And I do believe that in the event that you take that floor into the club, you are going to have an issue.
Okay. So that's very important, thank you. So there's something that we need to be careful of. Remember that when we talked about leases, we said it can only be a lease if the asset cannot be substituted. You still remember? And you can enjoy the substantially all the economic benefits. Now, in enjoying substantially all of the economic benefits, we talked about restrictions. You still remember? But we're saying how to use it. Then how do I enjoy substantially all of the economic benefits? But restriction is in two. There's restriction which is about scope, where they are not restricting you, but they're giving you scope of the contract to say we are allowing you to only work within this scope. And I remember last year we used an example of Impala car rental, where we said if they say you need to drive the car in Zimbabwe, they have given you scope. They're not restricting your economic benefits. You still remember? Which means within Zimbabwe, are you allowed to use it in any way that you want? To go anywhere where you want? Which means yes, enjoy substantially all the economic benefits. So we need to watch out on restrictions. We've got two types of restrictions. Restrictions for scope, and we've got the second restriction, which is for protective rights. You still remember we also talked about protective rights, where I'm restricting you from using the asset in a certain manner because I'm trying to protect the value of that asset. Therefore, when we talk about directing usage, we're talking about, are you able to direct usage within the allowed scope in the contract? So for example, if the contract says, due to the proximity of the building, you are allowed to use the building in any way that you want except for vending and using it as a club or a church. Because we understand that if you use it as a church, numbers, the floor may not be able to take it. So the building will collapse. If you use it as a club, noise. So the area does not allow you, or we don't have licenses for you to operate it as a club or a church. So within the scope now, if we remove the things which have been scoped out, are you able to make a decision on the manner of how you want to use the building? Let's say you wake up and you'll be like, today I feel like using it as a study room. Then tomorrow your girlfriend comes, it changes from a study room to maybe a discussion room or something. So when you look at directing of how to use the asset, in that instance, we normally then say directing is coming through as a result of you having the ability to make decisions on operations, of how to operate that asset. So within the scope, are you allowed to change and do things that you desire? Then you've got another one where you're not even allowed to operate in the way that you want to, because you are not the one who's operating it. Where we gave an example of an aeroplane. So our president hires an aeroplane from United Arab Emirates. Now, can he say, since I've hired it, I'm going to fly it, so I'm now the new pilot? Even if he's the president, can he do that? No. Which means that he cannot apply the provisions of the second provision, where you're saying you are directing through operating the asset, because you're not the one who's actually operating it. So if you're not the one who's operating it, what does he need to do for him to be able to direct usage? He needs to structure the contract in the way that whoever who's directing will be following instructions in the contract. Which means the contract can say by 6 o'clock we'll be leaving, so the pilot should be here. Then every day the plane is supposed to fly down to Vic Falls, we fly to Blair, and then we fly back to Harare, and then we can take it back to your country. So that way now, though I'm not the pilot, am I directing how to use the asset? Yes. But that direction now is predetermined by a certain document where someone is following instructions. So those are the, I'm not sure if it answers the question. Okay. Yeah. Right, so I've got this question. I need to finish this question in under an hour. So the assumption that I have is we managed to read the question. I gave it to you on Monday. So I believe if you got 30 minutes to read 100 marks, surely you could read 65 marks in 2 days. Right, so here we go. We have got a guy who's called Oxford Limited. And Oxford Limited, this guy is applying IFRS. And he's got a year end, which is February 2015. And if you remember what we said, the first thing that you need to do is you need to put a timeline. You still remember? So the moment you see the year end, you come, you'll be like, look, my year is starting in March, is it so? So I'm starting 1 March, and we're ending 28 February. This is key. The reason why this is important is our minds are configured to think of a year which starts from 1 January to 31 December. So the moment we've got that year end like that, it usually comes at the very first paragraph. And then on somewhere on page 5, you've got an asset which is purchased on 1 November. And year end is February. The moment it's 1 November, automatically my mind thinks this asset has been used for 2 months. So it's important to keep coming back. Each time you've got a date, figure out when is it fitting in my timeline, because your mind will deceive you. That's when you are revising now, when the script comes back, and now you are now sober and be like, how did I miss this? So we've got this guy, 28 February, we have completed all the procedures on the trial balance of Oxford for the year ended 28 February 2015. Again, the reason why I emphasize that during reading time, just read to understand, is this statement can misdirect your mind. That they've just completed the audit procedures of the trial balance of Oxford for the year 28 February 2015. The members of your audit team has highlighted certain areas. It's kind of like putting this scenario into an audit background. So if at that point you start reading, now with an audit mind, then there's a problem. Because you're no longer reading for the sake of understanding, but you're now reading for the sake of looking for audit triggers. And then the moment you then get to the required and you then realize that it's actually financial accounting, you now need to reread again. So during reading time, especially test 2, like I said, it's integrated. Forget about the course. Read, just understand what's going on. Who's who? What's happening? What do you do? But, so the members of the audit team and blah, blah, blah will give you that background information. Then further background information that we have here. If you information, you could not answer a thing correctly. So here's their background. Oxford's main business is the manufacture and wholesale of very exclusive household furniture. So furniture is their inventory. Am I right? Oxford started experiencing problems with cash flow during the current year, and general trade conditions have also not been as favorable as in the past. This has placed the company under tremendous pressure to maintain current reporting earnings per share figures. You've inspected the minutes of directors' meeting that was held on 5 April 2014, in which the financial director was quoted as saying that the company will have to resort to very aggressive accounting methods in order to maintain the reported earnings figures. The company will certainly have to make use of their reserves in order to achieve their projections. This is not the time to start thinking about who is the accountant. Could there be CPC? Could there be NOCLA? Just absorb. Okay. They've got financial challenges which have been taking place. As a result of that, this other guy wants to go aggressive in terms of how they account. Be in compliance with IFRS. So that's what you just need to know for now. Financial information, then we're given the financial information, the background there. So the field starts and stuff like that. Then these are the contracts which have been entered into by the company. Manufacturing machines. And they say included under PPE of Oxford. They've got manufacturing machines that have been acquired, but also certain machines that have been leased. Is that correct? Is that correct? Do you think that's correct? Under PPE, they've got purchased assets and leased assets. Is that correct? Why not?
Because the legal assets have got specific standards that base their application.
Agreed. But when it comes to presenting them in the feed stats, do we have a line item that we then say right of use or PPE, and then not for PPE, owned, leased, blah, blah, blah? So that accounting might probably be correct, you agree? Okay. Depending on if they did the proper disclosures. Then the following information has been supplied. Machine A. Machine A was originally owned by Oxford, but due to the strain on the cash resources as discussed above, Oxford entered into a sale-leaseback transaction with XYZ Bank. The lease contract is structured as a finance lease for the lessor. Oxford will have the right of use of the machine at the end of the lease term for no further consideration to XYZ Bank. Details of the transaction are as follows. Now, just based on that paragraph, what type of contract is this? What type of contract do we have here? I've got 3 minutes to conclude on this. So help me out. Sale leaseback. Okay, but sale leaseback has got different types. Which type is this one? What type of contract is this one? We've got about 12 days to go to the exam. This is not the time to be like... Which type of contract are we dealing with? This should be on your fingertips by now. When you've got a sale leaseback, what are the potential things which can happen? You might end up having a sale and then lease again, confirm? So you've got a sale which took place and you've got a lease which is taking place, which means two different transactions. What else can you have? What else can you have? That's the most important part. That's actually the core of that of the concept here. Every time as an accountant, especially as an accounting student, if you see a sale leaseback, what should come into your mind? What about IFRS 15? What about IFRS 15? When we were doing IFRS 15, when we look, you all agreed that this is covered also in IFRS 16. What was the issue? If there is a... Okay, so this one has got a repurchase agreement. Confirm? So if there's a repurchase agreement, what's the problem? What's the problem which is there? It's not good enough to know that this bag is repurchase there. then XYZ bank apparently then make the payment. My friend has been working. Ability agree. So credit, loan, liability. How much on day one? How much?
I think a loan like this.
So in figures, how much today? Agreed? In figures, we've got the figures on the board. You've got the figures on your question as well that you have with you. Yes. 180,000. There we go. Which is the selling price. Confirm? Thank you. So 180. I agree with that. Do you also agree? Okay. What happened subsequently? This loan has been taken when? 1 September 2013. Our year end is 28 February, which means in this period from 1 March to 28 February, what do we need to raise in our financial statements? Or what journals do you think we need to raise? You take interest, yes, finance costs. So number one, we need the finance cost. What else do we need to raise?
I think we'll need to continue depreciating the assets to them.
They will need to continue to depreciate that asset which they said they sold. They didn't sell, it's still there. What else? What else do we have? There has to be something else. As in, can't tell me if you take a loan, this is all you do. Yeah. The repayments which are being done. So number 3, we've got repayments. But they didn't give us the finance cost percentage. How do we get it? We need to compute it. So, what is FB? 0. What is PMT? 85? 451. What is PV? 180. What is N? 3 years. So is it possible for me to find I? Yes, you find your I there. You amortize. You get your interest. Do your depreciation. You do your repayments. Done. That's it. Which means that all this information about original costs, selling price, carrying amount, the 3 years 85. This would have worked if you had concluded that this is a sale leaseback. It was appropriate information for a sale leaseback. But you were not given that information to do that. You were given that information, some for calculation of depreciation, some for the loan. So if you had picked the wrong substance of the transaction here, you find yourself donating more money next year to CAA, and you don't like it. I need to take your money to ICAS. They'll pay us, but at least in another contract. Machine B, running out of time. Machine B. Now, machine B now was manufactured by Oxford and is leased to Fadfin Limited in terms of a lease contract. The details of the lease are as follows. Okay, my apologies here. I didn't want to say machine. I wanted to say furniture. Okay, but I was working in machines, so I had machine 1, A, B, C. But it's supposed to be furniture because their core business up there was furniture. You still remember? Okay, so you can simply replace that with furniture B. So furniture B was manufactured by Oxford and is leased to Fadfin Limited in terms of a lease contract. The details of the lease are as follows. What type of contract do we have here? Manufacturer dealer lease. You'd failed to identify that, again next year. It is. Then the syllabus, it set awareness level, which means you need to know with a little bit of some basic calculation. This is basic. So if it's a manufacturer dealer list, what journal entries we need to raise for manufacturer dealer list? How does it work? Manufacturer dealer list. Right, let's be quick, let's bring it on. Yes. We need to de-recognize the asset. Agreed. What's the nature of our asset here? Inventory. So, number one, we need to de-recognize inventory. If we de-recognize inventory, what will be the other leg? Cost of sales. So that means our journal entry, debit cost of sales, credit inventory. Is that it? Are we done? What else do we need to do? We need to, we are selling our inventory. So we need to recognize our revenue there. So the other journal entry, debit, credit, sales. With debit what? Okay.
How the machine sell this paper?
How the machine?
Sell this paper.
Okay. So the sell this machine, I think we did the accounting there. You just need to replay the video. Okay. Confirm we covered it?
Yes.
Okay, yes. So you just need to replay the video. Right. Well, what were we talking about? Sales. What's the debit? It's debit receivable. Did we receive the money for the sales? No, not yet. So this guy owes us. So we've got a debtor sitting there. What does the standard say about the type of data that we put there? We should put the amount. How do we calculate the amount? Are you sure? There are rules which are there. There are certain rules. Yeah.
I think in terms of 15 say we it's all transaction. It's for the key to
Yeah. We don't present value, yes. So remember, no significant financing component if your revenue is for less than 12 months, practical experience. What are the rules in IFRS 16 for manufacturer dealer leases specific to the debtor and the sales figure? There are specific rules which are there. if you are seeing these rules for the first time in here, did we ever come across some term which they say gross list data? And some term which they say unearned finance income?
Yes.
So why are you looking surprised that I don't know what you're talking about? So we raise our gross list data here. And then we credit unearned finance income. There. What is gross list data again? Gross list data. Now you guys are making me repeat a class. Gross list data. How do you come up with the gross list data? The aggregate of the, thank you. In other words, all your payments times the number of payments. Your undiscounted payments. That's the gross list data. If they're undiscounted, that means the net list data is the discounted one, the present value. So effectively what it means here is by putting the gross and removing the unearned, this is a net, it's present value. Happy? You need a few seconds to digest. You good? Okay. So we then raise our journal entry like, but the sales figure, the standard says something about the sales figure. I don't remember what it says, so if you can't find it, we get to finish this class without talking about it. Yes. It should be at, I agree with the fair value of the underlying asset, but there's something else before they say that. It says lower something. At the lower of, yeah? The lower of the present value of the lease payments or the fair value of the asset. Is it so? Huh? Come guys, is that what the standard says? If I'm lying again, I need to tell me that's not what it says. Are you there? Are you there in the standard? Okay. So tell me what it says in the standard. Yes. Yes. Exactly. So what the standard is trying to bring here is, it's saying this is a manufacturer dealer list. The manufacturer dealer list, what they do is they sell their products at the take price, which is the fair value of that asset on that day, confirm? Which is the shop price. But we understand that it's not always that the seller will always receive that take price, because the seller can give a discount, confirm? Which means we end up getting payments which are lower than the fair value because we've discounted, or maybe we've got an arrangement where we don't expect to receive the full amount. So if the fair value is above the present value of the amount which we're going to receive, we go back to this is a sale, this is revenue. What does IFRS 15 say? IFRS 15 they says which one should be your revenue? What's transaction price? Transaction price, IFRS 15 says what exactly? The transaction price is the amount expected to be received. So if you've got fair value of 10 and minimum lease payment, the present value is 7, Which one are you expecting to receive, 10 or 7? 7. So the standard then says you need to pick 7 as yourself. It's coming from if it's 15. I'll repeat one more time. You have got an asset which you are selling under lease. Confirm? But this asset that you are selling is your inventory. If it's your inventory, that means whatever that you are selling, that's your revenue. Confirm? And we said here the journal entry that we raise is we debit the data and we credit the sales. But now, the sales ideally are supposed to be at fair value, which is the take price. But the problem which is there is the data may not be equivalent to the sales price. The data being the present value of the lease payments. So if the data is below the sales price, which one do we pick to be the value of our sales? That decision is not made by IFRS 16. It's made by IFRS 15 because we're talking about revenue. So revenue then says, of the two, the data amount and the price which is on the shop, which one are you expecting to receive? The data amount. Confirm? So if the data amount is lower than the fair value, you always go for the data because that's the amount expected to be received. If the data value is not lower than the fair value, the expectation is their equivalent. Because you never get to a position where you get someone who is now paying for more than the fair value. That person has to be very down. So at the end of the day, that paragraph which says the sales figure is the fair value or the present value of the lease payments if they are lower, it's deriving that concept from IFRS 15. Which means when it's a discussion question and we say logical flow is not going to pick and say it's stated under IFRS 15. But it's to state the logic that the reason why we're picking the lower is because that's the amount which is expected to be received, which is what the standard for revenue requires us to do. Okay, are we good then? So at the end of the day, your journal entry there becomes quite simple. You got your lease payments which are there. We're supposed to discuss the lease payments, am I right? Yes? Do you say present value of the lease payments? That's the revenue. Right. That's what I'm now saying. You can't have that situation. Because that situation is telling you that you've got some dumb guy who's paying for above market value. So that situation does not exist. Right. So let's talk about this one. Which payments are you present valuing? Do we have a future value? Do we have FV? How much? 50K. So we've got 50K over there. Do we have PMT? 200. Do we have N? 4. Do we have I? Which I do we use? You see that I, that interest that we're given, what form of interest it is? Remember, we've got various interest rates. We've got market interest rate. We've got implicit interest rate in the lease. We've got incremental borrowing costs. We've got what? So is this one correct? Okay. Did you see where it's coming from the standard? And the reason why I'm saying this is because you can get a case study where you've got an accountant who discounted a manufacturer dealer list to get the present value, which equates to the data, but they discounted using what? Or they discounted using the implicit interest rate. And then it's the implicit interest rate is like it's a list, it's fine. It's not fine. Okay. There we go. The rest confirm you know what to do. Let's jump to the next one. Oxford House. Oxford has wanted to relocate to a new head office building for quite some time. On 1 September 2014, Oxford moved into their new luxurious head office in Mount Pleasant. Oxford was not in a financial position to acquire legal ownership of the building and therefore decided to lease the building from the current owner instead. This would alleviate the pressures on the company's cash resources. The lease was structured in such a way that the ownership of the building and the land on which it is situated never actually transfers to Oxford at any stage. But Oxford will be granted the right to use the right to use of the building at the end of the lease term in exchange for the once-off payment of a negligible amount. The details of the lease contract, the inception and commencement dates of which are both 1 September 2014 are as follows. Right, before we look at the details, let's look at important information which is here. Number one, do you think this is a lease? Do you think this is qualified to be a lease? Okay, why do you think this is a lease? What are the factors that you're seeing here? Let's say the question was, do we have a lease here? What would you talk about? Yes. There's an identifiable asset. Okay? Yeah, are you still going? So she says, if this was a theory question, I would have stated the principle that you need to have an identifiable asset for this to exist as a lease. Let's apply. Let's apply. Application, yes. Thank you. Do you see the detail of his response? He says the asset is explicitly identifiable in this contract because it's mentioned to be number 1 Hammond Road, Mount Pleasant. Now I want to give you a better answer. That answer is the asset is identifiable as it is mentioned in the contract. If you apply it, no. Or the asset is explicitly stated, that's not application. Or if you say for an asset to be identifiable, an asset can be identified explicitly or implicitly. That's theory jumping. So, a few things that I want us to take note of. Your application should be relevant. It is correct to say that the standard says the asset is identifiable, can either be identified implicitly or explicitly. But if you put that statement is lacking relevance because you are mentioning both explicit and implicit. The two cannot coexist. Am I right? It has to be one of the two. So which one of the two is applicable here? That's the one that you need to mention. So if it's explicit, start your answer with the asset is explicitly mentioned to be done. You don't need to talk about the implicit, because the implicit is not relevant. If you put implicit in your solution, anywhere in your solution, you get a drop-down line. Because now your answer turns from application to memory dumping or theory dumping. Is it clear then? Number two, if you say the asset is explicitly identified in the contract, again you get a red pen which goes down. Because based on your solution, I'm supposed to be able to point or touch the asset you're talking about. So without mentioning number one, Hammond Road, Mount Pleasant, you have not identified that. Is it clear then? So I want to differentiate between just stating theory and applying. Stating theory is telling me that it's explicitly identified. That's theory, you have not yet applied. Application is moving away from saying, yes, explicitly, but if I go to these guys, their asset is actually 1, 2, 3, 4. Heavy. So identified assets, yes. What else do we need for us to conclude this asset is a lease contract? We should have a right to control usage. So state that. What else? Do I go into application or I need to state further? State further. What else should I be stating? What else? You're saying it, but I can't hear you. What else? What else? What else? Yes.
There has to be a big term in the consideration.
Before you get there? Yes.
To then elaborate on the right to control as you need to state that by Oxford is the right to control use. It is the right to obtain substantial or from the use of marijuana.
Yes.
And the right to direct use.
Thank you. You said there should be right to control. What do you mean by that? We need to look if this guy has got rights to obtain substantially all the economic benefits and has got the ability to direct usage. Then you can apply. Do you think this guy is enjoying substantially all of the economic benefits? Yes. Why? Let's apply. What exactly do you need to state in your answer?
For the duration of the lease term, which is 4 years, Hammond will get the rights to the other parties for using the building. Also, given that it was head office, Hammond will have the ability to administer its other income generating activities for that very same.
Thank you. So talk about how is the asset going to be used to prove that there is an economic benefit. But remember that the standard says substantially all. If you prove that we're enjoying economic benefits, also prove why you're saying we're going to substantially enjoy all. By kicking out the other guys, prove that there's no any other guy who is able to come and access this building. If that is not there, you have not checked. Direction of usage. We said earlier on, direction of usage can be predetermined or it can be obtained by actually using the asset. Which one do you think is applicable here? Is it predetermined or these guys can actually direct how to use by making decisions on what to do?
Yeah, I think both the direction is predetermined.
Okay. Do you have evidence of that in the contract?
Well, to be honest, I mean, say these guys will enter into a contract,
Yes.
which I assume that say we are listening to office to you. So I then reason further to say, well, as much as it was not clear in the scenario, I think just reason to say, realistically, is it possible? Then wake up one day and say, no, we are no longer using the office.
Okay.
Which I took some kind of repetition.
Okay, I hear you. Now, after the discussion, would you still go for that one or would you go for the other one?
I think I'll default to A.
Which one? Which one? A?
A is when they put the right direct how or what the asset is going to be used.
Yes.
B is when they cannot really direct how what the possibilities are predetermined.
Yes.
Yes.
So the building is being used as what? Head office. Who decided to use it as a head office? Oxford. So do you think Oxford is in control of the decision making on how to use the product? Yes. That's what you need to talk about. Okay. Yes. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. No. Reread again. You interpreted it incorrectly. Yes. 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 See? Yes. Finish off the whole sentence. They are saying that they signed a 12-year one, a 12-year lease contract, but the useful life is 15 years. So for the first 12, it's covered. But after the 12 laps, they're also getting a further right to the remaining years for a negligible amount. What do you mean? Yes. No, it doesn't affect the lease time. Yes. They're not, yeah?
I just wanted to ask, there's something that you want to say,
Yes.
it does to substantially old.
Yes.
I think you said something like at least here it doesn't make this to win.
The useful life of the asset doesn't matter.
So that if someone is using it for 12 years,
Yeah.
can you use that as saying
No, you can't use that one. Okay, so let me explain that one. The question which is coming through is, our lease is for 12 years. The useful life is for 15 years. So when we are proving that the lessee can enjoy the use for substantially all of the economic benefits, can we say that since the lessee is using the asset for 12 out of 15 years, they enjoy substantially all of the economic benefits? And the answer is don't do that. You donate next year. The standard is saying during the duration of the lease, are you obtaining substantially all of the economic benefits? It's different from saying, are you substantially enjoying all of the economic benefits over the useful life of the asset? That's not the question. Is it clear on that? Yes. So when you're discussing economic benefits, never do it in reference to the useful life. Okay. Right. Then for consideration and for a period of time, that one is not really important. Right? That maybe you can get out a mark. Yeah. So let's come back to this part. We talked about understand the scenario. I want to bring a few things here, which if you didn't understand the scenario, then you would fail the exam. So, what else? Right.
I want to start from here, where it says the lease was structured in such a way that the ownership of the building, which is the building and the land on which it is situated, never actually transfers to Oxford at any stage. But Oxford will be granted the right of use of the building at the end of the lease term. It brings in a context that there is land and buildings. Is that correct? Let's hang on to that. Then it comes on the details of the lease contract. Then it says stand-alone selling prices. How did we use these stand-alone selling prices for this lease? Did you see the stand-alone selling prices? Yes. When you saw them, what did you think? Yes. For separating the different components of the lease. So the first thing which those two statements were triggering was before you go on to measurement, you need to test this lease for separate components. And I hope you did that. So how do we test for separate components? Where is that covered in the standard? Separate lease components of a lease. It's B12. They introduced it there, then they cover it somewhere else in detail. Look for another B again. B32. So B12 and B32. Now let's go to B32. B32 says it starts with separate lease components at the top. What does it say are the rules for separating the lease components in a lease? What are the rules which are there? Yeah, this is just reading from the standard, so I'm sure this one should not be nightmare. So let's quickly have it so that we're out of grade 8. Right. Number one?
The leasing benefit from the use of underlying
Can the lessee benefit from any of the components which are in the lease on its own or with readily available resources to the lessee?
No.
Number two?
And underlying asset is neither highly dependent nor highly integrated with their underlying assets.
Are the lease components or the underlying assets highly interrelated? Or do they customize each other? Or are they inputs to some other thing? Those are the two requirements. Which means if this is a discussion question, you need to discuss that test. Now, does that test sound familiar? It sounds familiar to which standard? 15. Exactly what we do for F15 is also what we do for IFRS 16. The moment we realize that you are listing more than one thing, so that means you might have more than one contract, which you might be allowed to then combine if you go to the paragraph which covers contract combination of the standard. So the first thing is to say, are they separate? If they are separate, then can I treat them as one by applying the paragraph for contract combinations? So if you look at this one now, if I go back to, we are leasing land, we are leasing buildings. And one of the things that IFRS 16 then says is, once you've calculated the figures, you don't disclose them or present them using IFRS 16, but to present them based on I-16, which means it needs to be included in the PPE note. Even the measurement for the right of use asset borrows the concept of I-16. You still remember? You get to I-16. I-16 says land and buildings is not one thing. It's two separate things. So if you've got land and buildings, you need to separate. You still remember that? So the moment you saw this list which had land and buildings, it was a trigger to say, test if these are not two lease contracts. We should be accounted for separately. Because once we calculate the figures for the right of use asset, we want to go and disclose them in the PPE note. If you combine these, when you get to PPE note, you get stuck. Because you then say right of use what? Because PPE note says there's a column for land, there's a column for buildings. So if you combine your right of use, is going to go away. Yes.
And recently, given the discussion question, and I'm supposed to apply the paragraph of separation. Do I start by taking the transfer experience in the IS that it's learning using their separate? Or because for me, this paragraph means that if I'm applying this paragraph, the lessee cannot enjoy the moving without the interleave for me. So if the discussion question.
Yes. So you start there straight B32. Yes. It's good that you said the components are interrelated for you. You then put the for you. Now here's the thing. I don't expect that we would have reached the same conclusion here. Some would have gone, it's 1. Some would have gone, it's 2. What is important was the 2 tests. Because the marks are in the testing, not on the conclusion. Make sense? Okay. So he says, to him they are interrelated. They depend on each other. Because probably you're saying, how can we have a building which is not on land? Agreed. Or someone comes from a perspective of, yeah, you can actually rent a building which is not on land. But if I'm renting, for example, CA is renting second floor to 5th floor. This is not sitting on land. Maybe the guys who are renting ground floor, yeah, maybe. So you then realize that in accounting, people actually can prove that the building, you can actually enjoy the building without the land. And you can enjoy the land without the buildings. So I'll give you an example. We've got some guys who are here. You know where the 4 parking area there, and they do some gas stuff there. Yeah. They're 2 separate companies. One guy is renting the space for parking. The other guy is renting for that room for gas. Okay. The gas guy is like, I'm renting a building here. I'm not renting any land. Because I'm not using any land. I'm using the building. Then the parking guy is saying, I'm renting the land. But that building, I don't have any buildings here. Makes sense. So it depends with the perspective that you take this from. The conclusion that I reached on this question, I'll give you the solution. I reached the conclusion that the land and the buildings can be enjoyed separately. And one does not depend on the other. Because remember, when you talk about the highly interrelated, what we may say is one highly customizes the other. The fact that you've got a building does not customize the land. The land remains the land. It doesn't become more fertile because there's a building. The same applies. If you've got land there, it doesn't change the functionality of your building. It's not customized at all. So some questions that other people might ask is then, if you are renting here and you've got parking right there at the bottom, and we also renting land as well. And practically from what I've seen in the industry, if you go to does anyone audit Rainbow Towers here? Right. the finished stats of Rainbow Towers, did you ever look at the PPE notes? How do they treat parking? Parking. They say parking, those are improvements. They are not land. So they treat parking as a building. Which is the same thing with, take for example, Zimex. They demolished that building, then they put a parking spot there. You can't tell me you go to their books, you find land. Full stop. They've got land, they've got buildings there. That's what they put in their financial statements. They constructed something. Yeah. The building is not always something which has got walls and there's a roof. To be built something. That's the idea. But anyway, so I'm saying in conclusion here, you might have reached 1 or you might have reached 2. That's still okay. I'm quite fine with that. What I'm not fine with is someone who doesn't do the test. Yet it's clear there. Okay. So after you've done the test, then the issue was about, let's then probably separate. But now, here's the last thing that I want to talk about before we go on. The very last statement. Before we go to the last statement, remember, once you calculate your right of use asset for the building, you need to depreciate the right of use asset. Okay. But now, which one would you use? 12, 15? It can be 12. It can be 12. What does the standard say about depreciation? It says you depreciate at what? At the lower of the lease term or the useful life of the asset, unless if there is an option for the lessee to take ownership of the building, confirmed at the end of the lease. In other words, unless if the lessee is going to use that building for the remainder of the useful life, which is what's happening here. So do you see the small loopholes which were in this case study, which if you are not quite careful, you don't see issues. Right, the last part. Oxford is a registered VAT vendor. The lease contract for the land and buildings as a whole is classified as an installment credit arrangement. What does this mean? Installment credit arrangement, quickly, what does it mean? It means that, yes, yeah. Guys, can you please give him the paragraph of depreciation? 32. Right, so I answered yours, you can answer mine now. What does it mean when the type of the contract is an installment credit arrangement? Please help us here. Yes, please. You can't be wearing a similar shirt and not know that. Yes. So the VAT, what about the VAT? It should be calculated based on the cash price. And when should it be paid? Huh? Payment of the VAT. Yes. Upon signing upfront, agreed. But there are two parties here. The lessee, the lessor. Now, why did they classify this as an installment credit arrangement? What does it mean? They want to separate what type of contracts? And okay, a contract for lease can be an installment credit arrangement, or it can be what? What can be? A rental contract. So if it's a rental contract, they're saying they are assuming this to be just you are renting. If it's an installment credit, they're assuming it to be a what? To be a sale, is it so? So which is why they're saying since this is a sale, we want the VAT upfront. But if you are just renting, you then provide the VAT as the rental service has been provided. Agreed. Now, here's the story. We've got two people here. Lessee, lessor. Lessee has got what type of VAT? Lessee? Lessee. Input. Lessor, output. So, lessor side, VAT pay upfront. Let's see, what does it mean? VAT, you are claiming when? Huh? You're claiming when? Is it over the duration of the lease term? Huh? Remember, the rules are applied uniformly. Okay. At the time of supply, which is when? Which is when? We need to call the text, guys. The VAT, yeah? Yeah. Okay, I don't know the rules. All I know is the VAT, if it's an installment credit arrangement, since Zimbra claimed it upfront from that guy, I can also claim it upfront. Because why should Zimbra delay mine yet they are claiming full amount there? So speak to the text team. If I'm not correct, okay, they know the text rules better. But my understanding is the essence is, if one is claiming upfront, I am also allowed to claim upfront. If that one is delayed, I can also delay. So now, let's further read this. And the input VAT relating to the lease contract can therefore be claimed in full from Zimbra at the commencement of the lease. Good thing we explained to you what it means. We should not. You put a full stop. That's after ICA there. Expect you to know what it means. Then the lessor in the above list, which is Realms Properties, has indicated that they are willing to finance the VAT on behalf of Oxford. What does this mean? You miss this, you lose 10 marks. Like seriously. What does it mean? Yeah. Yes.
I think the installments will not include VAT.
Okay.
The installments payable by
Okay, so does it mean that I'm exempted from paying VAT? Because if I'm exempted, that also means I can't claim. Okay, how exactly? Okay. So it brings in a concept of lease incentives, am I right? Did you study on lease incentives? Did you? What did you guys study on? Because the whole night you guys have been like, Now, let's come back to this. This is really important for me. If you want to buy a house and you don't have money, you then go to the bank to get a mortgage, which means the bank is financing your purchase of the house. Am I right? What does it mean? Huh? What does it mean to you? When we say the bank is financing, what are we talking about? Yes. Yes, let's remove the VAT part. They are paying on your behalf. Yes. Are they buying the asset for you for free? Ah. Same applies with you guys cried out and be like, 10,000 is too much for 4 months and blah, 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 blah. Then we brought the edge loan. And edge loan is financing on your behalf. Is that correct? Are they donating fees? So can we agree that financing does not mean I'm paying for you and you don't pay me back? Financing means you don't have money, so I'll put the money up front, then you pay me slowly. Is it not so? So we come back here. Do the lease payments of 97,740 include VAT? Huh? It's written there. They include VAT, confirm? But now here's the deal. They're getting into a contract which Zimra is structuring as an installment credit arrangement. Now on the day that you get into the contract, the lessee is getting the asset. After getting the asset, the problem is the lessor is saying, look my friend, Zimra wants 15% of the value of that asset today. So ideally what I need to do is I need to ask you to pay an upfront deposit of 15% of that value so that I pay Zimra today. The rest of the installment you can pay over time. But the lessor is coming and saying, don't worry about that issue of an upfront payment of the VAT. I will pay Zimra upfront. You will pay slowly in the 97,000. Does it make sense? And all of this comes from, if you don't understand what financing means, then this whole thing, it's either you're going to say 97, let's exclude VAT because it has been financed. And technically that becomes incorrect, you agree? Or you have gone and removed and say, it affects my lease payments, therefore they're no longer included, right of use, and you go there. That's not the issue. Yeah. So, yes.
So maybe in another scenario, the statement you
yeah. Yeah. If it's an ICA,
yes.
It needs to be stated what's happening to the VAT. Yeah. All right. So I don't want to take too much of your time anymore. It's 8:13. But I hope somehow in the 2.5 hours, okay, almost 2 hours, 45 minutes, okay, at least you had something that you have to take home. All right. So guys, thank you very much for coming through. Let's study for test 2. Okay, great. Let's remember that consultations are open. You get stuck, don't get stuck on your own. Come through. We can do a Skype, we can do WhatsApp. If you call me, and I will be available. All right. Enjoy the rest of the night. Travel safely home.